The most recent South Carolina State University shooting is a crisis management nightmare, but a marketing professional's perfect case study for the do's and don'ts of how to address these types of situations. The bigger issue here is obviously safety, but I feel like South Carolina State is doing a horrible job of maximizing their focus on that one pillar. Yes, I understand that students may have made some unsound decisions. Maybe parents aren't enforcing certain practices and behaviors, but the bigger issue is how are these things happening on this campus so continuously? In the comments of all these articles, the one consistent message is people from the 80s, the 70s, the 60s are saying they've been selling drugs on that campus. Boop, boop. Let's take a step back from that because that sounds like a security issue. And then when you start talking about things like allegedly there was like 60,000 people on campus when the last shooting at homecoming happened, and little tidbit of information, the security chief might not have been there that weekend. Obviously, from a marketing perspective, they have to figure out ways to shift the blame to also make sure that the university is not positioned in the worst lighting, and also to make sure that the university doesn't make themselves susceptible to be liable for other types of impacts and concerns. I understand that, but I also think that all of this is able to happen because safety protocols do not exist. And also, the next bigger $10 million question is, why weren't heightened safety protocols established after the initial shooting for homecoming? It had to happen again in order for you to feel like it's time for us to make security practices a little bit more stringent. And I actually feel like they went from free game, do what you want, to the most extreme practices that in certain instances will negatively impact some of these students' experience. Now, a lot of parents are probably not happy with any of this, not happy about the shooting, not happy about how they're handling it. But let's dive into that most recent meeting and the message that's been put out by the president. The university had a meeting where they were to discuss whatever recent safety updates they may have made or security updates that they made, and ultimately, I guess, a plan moving forward. But a lot of the messaging was about them putting blame on students making poor decisions, having illegal practices, not necessarily hanging out with the right crowd, and all of the reasons why children get caught up into things like this. The other part of this was that the parents should make sure that they are teaching their children to make sound decisions. He literally said, if you can't stop your child, your niece, your nephew, your family member from smoking weed at home, don't send them here. That's not the message that you want to send, because if the child has a drug addiction, alcohol addiction, substance abuse of any time, because it could be tobacco cessation programs as well, this is an opportunity for you to be able to pour into your student body in a different way. We understand the challenges that our student body face that might be external to their educational experience, but we want to help them with that. Also made mention about the fact that he had 2 children that I guess just recently graduated from college. I think that as a marketing professional, we understand that emotional appeal is one of the most impactful ways that you can get a message sent. In this particular regard, we're not only talking about a person's education, but we're talking about their safety and their livelihood. And you're also talking about the child, the extension of that child's life, which is their family, their future potentially, and everything else in between. You're also talking about faculty and staff. There's a university that's right next door. And then there's also an elementary school on campus. The lives of a lot of people. And then we have to take it further and decide that the city of Orangeburg is not made worse because of the happenings of what's happening on the campus. Universities actually operate as silos. They're in their own jurisdiction. They establish their own government and rules. Obviously, they have to adhere to the external rules of that county, state, and federal government, but they're still also able to establish their own rules that make things illegal for them to do there. And I just think they're not taking the full ownership and responsibility of that the way that they should. In a parent, it was important for him to lead with the fact that since his children just graduated from college, his biggest concern was that they were safe while they were there, and they remained safe throughout the matriculation of their experience. However, he didn't lean into that to say, and as I had the experience where my children were safe the entire time, I want every student present and any future student that comes along. And even I would want the same for the past students. It's my desire. It's my commitment it is my pledge to make sure that safety is of the utmost priority for everyone that crosses through the threshold of this particular campus. I think he did a piss poor job of that. And as a marketing professional, I can tell you that whatever talking points they gave him, unless he just went off the dome and decided he was just going to rattle off whatever messaging he wanted to, that was horrendous. And I am ultimately concerned about the future of South Carolina State, because this is the window of time when high school students are starting to get acceptance letters. And some high school students will only get accepted to South Carolina State. Now,